It's great to be here with you all today. We're going to be talking about our subject of purpose, meaning, what is the meaning of life? What is it that brings us satisfaction? What is it that gives us that feeling of being fulfilled, of having a life fill up of good, something we can, look for, qualities that are important to us, the things that our hearts yearn for, value. Before we get into that, though, I want to talk just a little bit about Christian Science in simple terms. I read a quote recently attributed to Albert Einstein, who apparently said, "If you can't explain things simply, it means you don't understand them well enough." So you'll see that I like to boil down terms, even terms that we've heard a lot in our lives, but a lot of times those terms have many different meanings to different people. So the word God, for example, is a big word. It means a lot of different things to different people. So is the word Christian. So is the word science even. Most of you here have probably studied Christian Science before. If you haven't, I'd like to just boil down those two words individually and then tell you what they mean to me when they come together. First of all, though, I want to just say up front, this is not Scientology. Every once in a while, half an hour into the lecture, someone raises their hand and says, "Is it Scientology?" It's not Scientology. The only similarities that I know of is that the names sound familiar and that my name is Tom. Thank you for laughing. I'm here all night. Okay, so Christian and science. The word Christian, there are many different denominations of Christianity. So what is it at its core? To me, Christianity at its core, it's not about a particular building or name or group. In fact, when Christianity was getting going through the life of Christ Jesus, and even after it for a bit, the word Christianity didn't even exist. The people at that time called it the way. So what do we have if not a title, and if not buildings, and if not the way we worship and come together today? Not that those things aren't good, but at its core, Christianity to me means that something is about the life and about the works, about the love and the vision and the teachings, the healing brought about by the love and the vision of Christ Jesus, of the power that shone through that life, that showed us something about the nature of God and of reality. And then there's the people who followed him, his students or disciples as they're often called. The people who tried to walk the walk in a way that he did, because he said, if you're going to follow me, you'll have to do the same things that I've done, implying you have to love in the way that I love. You have to have the same depth of vision that I have, and you have to help people in the way that I have helped them. And they did. Those who followed him walked that walk to the best of their ability, and that was the foundation of Christianity. And still today, that is the foundation. That to me is what the word Christian means, above and beyond all other things. Now the word science, just like there are a lot of denominations of Christianity, there are a lot of different sciences. You have chemistry and you have geology, you have math. These are all different types of sciences. But what is a science when you boil it down to its most common characteristics? To me, it has at its core facts, rules, laws that can be understood by all people under any circumstance and that apply to all people equally. So there is the quality or characteristic of equality naturally built into anything that's a science. For example, 2 and 2 equals 4. That's a basic mathematically scientific fact. We don't ever wonder, though, if that applies to the people sitting in this room today, but not to like a little girl sitting in a village in the mountains of Afghanistan. 2 and 2 equals 4 for all people, all circumstances, no matter what. You don't earn it. You don't work your way up to it. And you can't mess it up. You don't get it by joining a certain group. You don't get it by being of a certain age. You don't get it by reading a certain book. 2 and 2 just equals 4. Something that is a science, that are those scientific facts, it's sort of an is or an isn't, and that it comes down to that. It either is or it isn't. And if it is, it applies to all people equally, everywhere, under all circumstances. The other thing about a science is that it's timeless. We don't wonder if 2 and 2 equaled 4 2,000 years ago, but maybe these days it's slipping a little bit towards 4.1. If it was true 2,000 years ago, it has to be just as true down to a point today. So it's universal, it's equal, it's timeless. The other thing about a science is you have to understand it. Science isn't something you just have blind faith in. You don't show up to math class and say, I believe math works. and then figure out, how you're going to do your grocery shopping and balance your checkbook and things like that. You go to math class, you learn about the principles of math, and then you take them with you and you apply them wherever you go. So there's that element of needing to understand it in order to apply it. Okay, what happens when we bring these two words together? You have the life, the works, the love, the vision, the healing, the power within the life, behind the life of Christ Jesus and those who followed him. To say that there's a science to it, to call it a Christian science, is to say that if there was ever any truth in that love, if there was ever anything real, anything that actually happened there, anything that ever really took place in the healing, in the love, in the vision, if that was based on anything, then whatever the truth was behind it, the science of it, the reality of it, the truth of it still has to be true today. It's timeless. Has to be true for all people, under all circumstances. Has to apply to all people equally. It's not something we earn or work our way up to, and it's not something we can mess up. If the love was ever really love that was there, then that love applies to everyone, and you don't earn it. It's already there. It's also, though, not something we can just say we believe in. It's something that we have to understand. And the more we can understand it, the more we can experience it, the more we can prove it. Just like the more you understand math, you take it to the grocery store and you work with it. You take it with you everywhere you go. You take the love, the peace, the inspiration, the strength, the unity, the selflessness, the healing with you everywhere you go. If you're talking about Christianity and the power that was at the heart of it as a science. It says, I don't just want to believe, I want to understand, and I want everybody to understand. Not, I want everyone to join my group, I want everyone to think or dress like me. This is for all people under all circumstances. One of my most favorite parts about the whole thing is to say that if there is a Christian science, it reminds me that, I hope as inspired as you are in a talk like this today, that when we get back on the freeway and we're driving home, to say that there was a Christian science behind what we talked about today is to say that the peace, the love, the joy, the sense of purpose that comes out of this hour will be with you right then and there on the freeway. And it'll be with you right then on the freeway when somebody cuts you off. Because that's the big temptation, isn't it? To say, I can feel peace, I can feel love when I'm on a walk in the woods or sitting by the ocean or listening to peaceful music or in an inspiring talk, maybe with my friends. But there's all these other circumstances where it says, not here, not now. But that wouldn't be scientific. We'd never buy that about math. We'd never say 2 and 2 doesn't equal 4 anymore just because that guy cut me off on the freeway. We'd never say, I got it, I understand it because I read that book, but too bad for all those other suckers out there who don't get it or don't have it. And probably my most favorite part about the thing is that when you're on the freeway and that guy cuts you off and you're reminded it's all still here. The next thing that comes to you is, it's just as true about the guy who cut me off. And that's huge. I love that. You can't have enemies, right? Not if it applies to all people equally and you can't even mess it up. So it's within that context today, within a Christian science, within an approach to understanding the life, the works, the teachings, the love behind what we know about Christ Jesus and his disciples in the Bible. It's within that context that we're going to talk today about our subject of purpose. Does that sound all right? You ready to go? Okay, good. So, my question, did I tell you yet this is going to be a little interactive? Don't get too comfortable. First 3 rows may get wet. Has anyone ever asked you what you want to be when you grow up? Yeah? Raise of hands. Who asked you? Anyone ever heard that question? Okay. Now that's a question that continues to evolve. When at a certain point, that's the way it's framed, but then it becomes, what are you going to study in school? And then it becomes, what are you going to do when you graduate? And then what are you going to do next? When are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? What are you going to do when you retire? And on, right? There's always some way, but behind that question is, where am I headed? How am I going to get there? How do I know what I'm going to find when I get there? How do I know I'm going to be okay when I get there? How do I know I'm going to be okay along the way? How do I know there's going to be good? How can I count on that? To me, that's at the heart of this question about purpose. When I was first preparing for this lecture, I was hanging out with a friend, and she had her little son with her, about 3 years old, and he said to me completely unprompted, totally out of the blue, "I want to be everything when I grow up." He paused for a moment, and then he said, "And a painter." I don't know how painter got separated out from everything, but what was great about that was that there was this kind of sky is the limit feeling. But we lose that sometimes as we go along, and all these kind of exterior things start to define who we think we are, where we think we're headed, what we think is possible to us. You know, we say, well, I studied this, or I live in this place, or I'm of this age, or I have this certain kind of family, and all that starts to add up, and the box gets a little smaller and a little smaller. You know, but that child, he didn't have that yet. It was just like anything's possible. So when we talk about purpose today, I want to try and break apart that box a little bit, get a bigger sense of what it is, and maybe drop some of those limitations as to what is possible, what really defines us, who we are, and the good that we seek for, that we yearn for most in life. So in order to do that, I don't just want to talk about what I think is most important in life and the qualities that I yearn for. I'd like to know what they are for you. What would give you a sense of purpose, that feeling of being fulfilled, that feeling of I've arrived? If I had this quality in my life, this characteristic. And the reason I'm talking about qualities is because we'll get to the things in a minute, the things, the places, the people. And we're going to separate those two just for the purpose of this talk tonight. Because, for example, someone says, well, if I just had more money. What one person might be saying is, if only I had more security in my life. If they said, I want some money, I need more money. Someone else might be saying, if only I had more respect in my life. Someone else might be saying, if only I had more freedom and opportunity in my life, and yet all three of them say, if only I had more money. So that's why we can't just focus on the things. We got to boil it down. What is the quality or characteristic behind the thing or the place or the person? Now, who here is willing to come up? We're going to write this. We're going to make a list. Who's willing to be a scribe for me and write these words down as we all share together? Really interactive. Great, thank you. Round of applause for our scribe.
Scribe under orders.
Scribe under order, okay. So, we'll start with the purple. And we'll have you write just on this list, on this side here. Come on up. So, qualities or characteristics that would be part of a life fulfilled. That thing that says, if I had this, or once I get that, or what is it that would be that life that is full? I've arrived. I have it all. What comprises that for you? Patience. Great. We're going to make a decent-sized list. So there's always this trying to write it big enough so people can see, but let's see if we can get as many as we can on there as possible. That looks pretty good to me. Part of the reason I do this is because my writing's not pretty and I don't spell as well. So I learned to just delegate. Okay. What else? That's great. Thank you.
Grace.
Grace.
Compassion.
Compassion. Trust. Forgiveness. Courage. I'm going to put love.
Service.
Service. Honesty and perfection. Perfection. Great. Tall order. Gratitude. I am going to add safety. Satisfaction. We'll come back.
Harmony.
Harmony. Great. Maybe 3 more. Clarity. Really good. Okay. 1 more.
Mercy.
Mercy. Lovely. How about a round of applause for our scribe? Thank you. I'll have you sit down. Thanks. Who's my next victim? Volunteer. We have one more list we need to make. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Round of applause for our next scribe. We'll do the blue one. Okay. So this list, this is going to be the place where we expect to see these kinds of qualities take shape. You know, or it's maybe our expectations, or it may be just the expectations of people around us, the kind of common ways we expect to have these things happen. Now, it doesn't have to be one for one, each word for the other word, but what are some of the places, or what are some of the things, or what is it that we expect to happen, that we need in life, those important things in life that we feel are the source many times, or the way that these kinds of qualities get expressed? Healing, great. Knowledge, okay. Stability is kind of a quality. Where would you expect to find stability? What brings stability, would you say? Maybe. We'll come back if you need it. Yeah? Prayer, okay, great. I'm going to add money, because we talked about that, a place where maybe we expect to find opportunity or respect. Home, great. Can I just say house? It's a little bit more of a thing, maybe. Yeah, house. Good, what else? What? Family, great. Job, excellent. What else? What are some of those other important things? Church, good. Beach, lovely. Absolutely, yeah. I get it all on this one. I get puppy dogs, I get music, good. Great. What else? School, absolutely. Yep. Community. Friends, great. Yeah, health. Very important. Yeah, skiing down the mountain. It's just we're just looking for tangible examples. We obviously won't get it all up here, but that's a place where you might have courage or see courage expressed, or you need a particular ability to go down, especially not the bunny slopes, but yeah. Okay, thanks. A couple more? Accomplishment, yeah. Can you give me an example? Well, let's do accomplishments. I think that's good. That's a good, maybe two more. Transportation, and we have jobs, so that's close to employment. So maybe one other one. Climate, okay, cool. When I just moved to Boston last year, I can tell you, climate is one of those things I'm thinking to myself, where'd the sun go? Where'd the warmth go? This is very much on my right-hand list. Okay, I think we're good for now. Thank you very much. Another round of applause for our scribe. Okay, let me explain what we're going to do here, and we'll come back to this, and then I'm going to tell you a story, actually. We're going to pause and interweave these together. First thing I want to say, this is not a compare and contrast. This is not a good and not good or anything like that. They're two lists that have a relationship to one another, and that relationship is very important, and we're going to talk about it. But the first thing I want to say is that, if this represents the kind of things, the kind of ways, the kind of places where we expect to find this good, right? The qualities in life that we feel will make us feel arrived, fulfilled. These were some of the good words that were coming out, purposeful. The one thing I notice is that any one of these things really can come or go. You can have a house, you can lose a house, you can be with your family, you can be on the road and not with your family, you could have a job, you could not have a job, you could be by the beach or not by the beach. These are all really good things, but they lack for me one essential characteristic, and that is absolute 100% consistency and reliability. Because any one of these things could come or go, here's what I think happens. We don't ever really feel like we've arrived. We don't ever really feel like we've got that absolute assurity that we have meaning, that we can be safe, that we can have the qualities we look for. Because if somebody said to you, you can have love, but you can only have it 5 days a week, how loved would you feel? You can have safety, but it could go at any time, right? You can have courage, but it might not always be there if the market changes, right? You can have beauty in your life, but if somebody steals your art, you won't have it anymore. All these kinds of qualities and characteristics, if they're tied to this stuff, if the relationship is this is cause and this is effect, then I think we go throughout our whole lives missing this feeling of, I can trust this 100%. So the question as we start to dive in and say, we're looking for a life that is fulfilled, we're looking for that big sense of purpose, how we can find the good in our lives that would give us that sense of purpose in a way that we can count on, then to me we have to talk about where we find that feeling of reliability and constancy. So we're going to dive into that in a second, but first I told you I'd tell you a story. When I graduated from college, I had a degree in philosophy. Who knows what you do with that? Sometimes I have people point and say this. I didn't actually know what to do when I graduated. Now, I learned a lot, and it was great, and I'm not knocking it at all. It was a really important part of my life and what I learned and how it helped me grow. If anything, actually, I was so good at arguing things that I had lots of ideas about what I wanted to do. It's just that I could stack up the pros and cons so well on either side that I couldn't even see the sky anymore by the time that I was done. So I'm out of school. I'm trying to figure out what comes next. What do I do? And I'm not having a whole lot of luck at that. People are asking me more, well, you know, you graduated, what's next? And I'd kind of try and give them some story as I was thinking through things. And, well, what did you get your degree in? I'd say philosophy, and they'd kind of look at me like, well, what are you going to do with that? And after a while, I started to ask myself the same question, and I started to get kind of concerned because no obvious pathway was opening up. So I decided that I really needed to pray about this. And prayer is one of those big words that means a lot of different things to different people. Prayer to me, at least for this moment, the way I would describe it is tuning in. I don't think of it so much as asking for something as much as trying to discover something, trying to tune in or listen for something. I believe that the answers are always there. I believe, and we're going to talk more about God in a minute, the nature of God, but I believe that God is always broadcasting, so to speak. And prayer is my tool for trying to tune in, for trying to listen, for trying to get that information or that inspiration, that new way of looking at things. So I decided I was going to pray about this. And so I kind of got quiet one day, and a lot of times when I used to pray, I would write out my thoughts, and I was writing down questions, and then all of a sudden, something happened that was very unusual for me. And to this day is one of the most, what I feel, one of the most direct conversations or communications that I feel I ever had with God. Because it came like a voice to me, not audibly, but it was something that basically said, write this down. And I started writing. And it was in the first person as a command to me, and it said, your job for the next 30 days is to do nothing but get to know me better. Go on a spiritual journey. Learn, grow, let go of fear. Forget what comes next. Don't reason about it. Don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Just put it aside for now. If you get some kind of indication of a job opportunity, just don't take that as your sign. You've got one job, and that's to plunge in deep on a spiritual level. Learn and grow spiritually. And if you do that in the next 30 days, I will tell you what comes next. It was that clear. And I signed it like a contract. I folded it up, I put it in my desk drawer, and I didn't tell anybody about it because I figured people would think I was crazy if I did. In fact, even when I started giving this lecture, I didn't talk about that experience as distinctly like that because I wasn't sure how that'd come across. But that was my experience. Well, I did this the best that I could, and about a month later, an interesting thing happened. I had a friend come to town. He was visiting me, and he said, there's this guy who has invited me out to lunch. I said, if I'm ever in the area, we should go out to lunch. And so he said, would you like to come along? And I said, okay. And while we were out to lunch, this guy offered us both jobs. We both declined. We both said, not interested. It was in finance. This was not what I felt was my cup of tea or anything I was interested in. And my friend wasn't either. He was a poet. I was a philosophy major and a poet, and they said, want a job in finance. So my buddy went home. I returned to my place, and then a day or so later, this thought came to me, call this guy back. This is what I had in mind. And I went, really? But I followed that advice. There's a lot more to that story, but the short version is that led to and effectively became my career in finance for the next 4 or 5 years. Now, I'm going to pause, and I will come back to that story in a minute, but I want to ask you guys, what do you think? Was that a fluke? Was it coincidence? Would it have happened anyway? Was it like winning the spiritual lotto? I got lucky, but that couldn't happen to everybody. I mean, it's hard to say, really, and I wouldn't fault anybody for saying, well, maybe it would have happened anyway, except to say that I continue to see this cause and effect relationship between our sense of spirituality and where our focus is, what's driving us, what's motivating us, and the way that things come together in our lives, and that oftentimes doors open up in ways that we wouldn't have expected it before. Those kinds of limitations, the kind of walls of the box start to fall away. And that's what I feel happened in that experience. I believe that it was scientific, spiritually scientific, based on this cause and effect rule or law. Now the question is, what does that mean? What does spiritually scientific even mean? Well, the word spiritual comes from the word spirit, and the Bible says that God is spirit. So that which is spiritual is that which comes from God. So spiritually scientific, a rule or law which comes from God. So if I'm going to claim that, though, we got to really talk about what the source is. Where does that come from? How could I make that claim, and what can we look at? So if we want to talk about spiritual things, a reasonable source might be the Bible. Now, the Bible is a word or a subject that some people love and some people hate. For some people, it's their guidebook to life. For other people, it's the thing they feel they've been beat over the head with and judged and condemned and cast out of the group. So to me, I like to boil it down again, because this was compiled, this was written, the people who wrote it. It wasn't just one person. It's letters, it's poetry, it's history, it's all kinds of, all this compiled together, but it's written by people. There's some common threads there. And one of those common threads is that people from all walks of life and all different backgrounds, even different religious persuasions, when they came up against something that seemed insurmountable or incurable, they got some new way of looking at things, some inspiration, some insight, something that helped them see things differently to such a degree that they found a way out, a way over, a way to be healed. And it happens again and again and again over a long period of time. To me, the Bible is not just a history book. It's about the laws, the principles, the ideas, the same inspirations that were there for those people that are there for us to understand today. So regardless of what your history is or what you've thought about the Bible before, to me, just boiled down, that's what it's about. It's a source of this deep knowledge and perspective that anybody can read and get something from and say, this applies to my life. Okay, so a spiritually scientific rule that talks about our sense of purpose, where it comes from, and the cause and effect relationship between seeking spiritually, spiritual vision, and how things take shape in our life. Here's one rule to me as far as I can tell. This is in the book of Isaiah in the Bible. It's written as God speaking to the reader, and it says this: "Bring my sons from far and my daughters from the ends of the earth, even everyone that is called by my name. For I have created him for my glory. I have formed him, yea, I have made him." Sons from far, daughters from the ends of the earth, that includes everybody, right? Nobody's left out of that. Formed and made by God, that sounds pretty good, but who heard the reason why? What was the purpose? For his glory, for my glory. Made for the glory of God. That is a rule to me. That is something that tells us about our purpose, as well as how we find the good in life we're looking for. There's a relationship there. Let's talk about it for a second. Made for the glory of God. God's a big subject. What does it mean to be made for the glory of this thing? If you want to know what you're made in the glory for, you got to know what the thing is. What is God? The Bible says that God is spirit. The Bible says that God is love. The Bible says that God comforts us like a mother. It says that we exist under the shadow of the wing of the Almighty in Psalm 91, like little chicks under the wing of the mother hen. It says that God is a rock. God is our shield. All these good qualities and characteristics. It says God is the source of all good. There was nothing made that God didn't make, and that God is of purer eyes than to behold evil. So much good attributed to the nature of God. I have with me another book called Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. Anyone who's studied Christian Science knows this book well because it's the textbook of Christian Science. It's a book about the Bible. It's a book about how to live and understand the Bible and apply what the Bible teaches in our daily life here and now today. To walk the walk, not just talk the talk. The last 100 pages of this book are all stories of people who found some insight into the teachings of Jesus, into the teachings in the Bible, that allowed them to find healing of things that were often considered incurable or insurmountable. The book was written by the founder of Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy. So the reason I bring this up is because in the back of this book there's a glossary, and in the glossary she has a definition for God. And what I feel that Mary Baker Eddy did was look through the Bible, look at all these analogies, all of these ways of talking about God, and try and sum up the nature of God into 7 words that we could say are synonymous for the name of God. Many of you have heard this before, but I encourage you to hear it with fresh ears, because the fact is, as much as we hear it, it's not always the way we see things. It's not always the way we feel. We say the word God, we worship everybody, whether you're Christian or not Christian, go to church, don't go to church. We all get the same kind of temptations. We all start to see things, and then that box starts to creep in on us. So the nature of God, Mary Baker Eddy wrote that from what she could tell in the Bible, the way God is described, that God is principle, God is love, God is mind, God is soul, God is spirit, God is truth. Which one am I missing? Life. Thank you. God is life. I think I got love was one of the first ones. Principle, mind, soul, spirit, life, truth, and love. If God is all of these things, if the very nature of God is that, if God is love itself, the creator, shepherd, guide, friend, what does it mean to be made in the very likeness of that God? What does it mean to be made for the glory of God? What does the principle of the universe need us to do for its glory? What does love itself need us to do to glorify love? Be loving. Express. The word glorify means to make something known. You ever thought about that? We exist to make God known. God couldn't exist without us, or wouldn't exist without us, and we can't exist without God. Just like if I drew one of these, what would you call that? A circle, great. And if I flipped the page and I did this, what would you call that? Squiggles, yeah, okay. Now what would happen if I took those squiggles and I put a circle in the middle of it? What would you call it? A sun. This is how, I'm going to illustrate. Circle. Squiggles. Yeah? There's your visual. Nothing here is abstract. Okay, we would be a bunch of squiggles without the circle, and the circle would not be a sun without the squiggles. You see what I'm saying? There's a relationship between the two. The sun, the rays that come out from the sun are the place, the brightness, the brilliance of God, which are also words that are part of the definition of to glorify something. To be the glory of something means to be the brightness or the brilliance of something. We are the place where God shines through. There is no quality or characteristic of God that is not built into the very nature of who we are. It's where the Bible begins, and I let it slip a minute ago. The Bible says, very first thing right up front, that we are made in the likeness of God. So the love of love itself is built into who we are. We're made to be loved. We're made to be loving. We're made lovable, right? If this is a science, it's not something we earn. It's not something we work our way up to. It's not something we get by reading a book or joining a group. It's either there or it's not there. So if the Bible says that we are made in the very likeness of God, then all of those qualities, all of those characteristics that are the outcome of God, just like each little ray that comes from the sun has all those properties and characteristics built into us. Each uniquely, though. This isn't about being like a cookie cutter kind of a thing. It all comes from the source. It's all built into who we are. We are the place where God shines through. To me, that's what it means that we glorify God. You can't see the wind, but you can see the effect of the wind. You can see it when it moves the leaves in the trees. You can't see God, but you can see God expressed in our intelligence, in our strength, in our clarity, in our capacity to understand, in our wholeness, our completeness, our endurance, our balance, our creativity. It all comes from this source. We are the manifestation. We are the place where it shines through. We are the glory of God. And this starts to tell us something about where we find these qualities and characteristics that are most important to us, to having a life that is fulfilled. The Bible gives us a very clear sense of cause and effect, that this comes from God. All of it, every good thing comes from God. That it's built into who we are. That we are the place where it shines through. That's what we are created for. We're not created specifically to be teachers or mothers or parents or students or community members, but all those things, that's where it shines through. So it's built into who we are, it comes from God, and then it gets expressed in our prayers, right? It takes form, it takes shape in friendships. In other words, we don't have friends so that we can get love. We have love, and we take it to our friendships, right? We have intelligence, and we have courage, and we take it to the ski slopes, and we take it to our jobs, right? So cause is God. And all the good that we seek and yearn for is in God and in our relationship with God. It's built into who we are. And the effect is all these things that are important to us in life. But what we are told, and what we constantly are tempted to think ourselves, is that when I have this, then I'll have this. In other words, that this stuff is cause, and that this is the effect, right? If I have the beach, then I have peace. If I have church, then I have compassion, right? But it's the other way around. It's a total reversal of logic. It's a whole new paradigm. And this to me is what was happening for me. When the thought came to me, pause, push all that stuff away, focus on God. Without me realizing it, the more I delved in, the more I got a sense of the presence and activity of God, the more I saw that be able to take shape in ways that were totally unexpected. Why? Because the goodness of God is unlimited. The goodness of God is infinite. It can take shape in ways that are totally unexpected. If we're seeking it here, then it gets expressed often in really unique and fun and amazing ways. So here's the second part of my story, right? I got that job. What I haven't told you yet was that I hated it. And it hated me. When I first showed up, this was a time in finance, I was basically just a glorified mortgage broker, where lots of people were jumping into the industry to make a quick buck. This was the 7 or 8 years leading up to the big crash. There was a lot going on there, right? And a lot of it was not on the up and up. A lot of it was not honest and straightforward. And I started, and I think the people that were around me just thought I was another one of those guys jumping in to make a dollar. People would stop me in the hallway and say, "What do you think you're doing here? Right? You don't have a right to be here. You won't be here very long." The secretaries who worked the front desk when I walked in, they'd make fun of the way that I dressed. They wouldn't give me a desk. They didn't give me business cards. They didn't give me one of those nameplates where you move to check in when you walk into the office to say I'm here. They didn't think it was worth their time because I wasn't going to be there long enough. And they made sure that I knew that. So what did I do? I went in every day. This was a commission-only job. I wasn't making any money. But there I was, and I felt it was the natural outgrowth of this prayer. I was certain of that much, but I didn't know the rest. I felt I had a sense of cause and effect. I didn't know exactly what the effect was going to be, but I knew it had to be good because I'd started from the right place. I could just intuitively sense that, and that grounded me. That kept me strong when all this negativity came on. But I sat at the corner of the desk of the secretary of the vice president because I didn't have any other place to sit. And she was happy to have me there because I became her errand boy. I would run her copies for her, right? Eventually, after I was there long enough, they gave me a little cubby hole by the copier, and they said, "That's your desk." Right? So eventually I had some business cards, and I put them in my little cubby hole, and I made a joke out of it. I said, "Well, if that's my desk, that's where my business cards go," right? After a while, I learned to do more. I learned to fill in some forms, and then I learned to call some clients. And after I could do the things she was doing, the vice president said, "Why don't you come sit at the corner of my desk?" So I went and I sat there, and he gave me a laptop, and then he started teaching me how to run numbers, right? And lock interest rates, and understand all these kind of things that were going on. And I started working with clients. Now, as I started to do this, the other thing that happened was these folks in the industry, there was this general impression that if you did the right thing, you wouldn't succeed, right? You had to lie, you had to kind of fudge the rules in order to get by. The system seemed built for it, right? So even people who wanted to do the right thing, it almost seemed like if you didn't, you'd hit a roadblock and you couldn't succeed. And it was really tough having business show up and say, "We want this kind of a deal." And I said, I can't do that. And then watching business get up and walk out. That was not easy. It wasn't easy when the people were just saying, play by the rules, play the game, right along with everybody else. This is just, the way that it's done. I would close my door and I would just pray things through, and often I would find solutions. But what happened during this time, as I started learning more and more and being able to do the work, was I started reestablishing trusting relationships with some of the sources of business that had kind of drifted away through the time. The vice president was actually an honest guy, and I was really grateful for that. He taught me a lot. But there was so much business that it couldn't all be handled. The problem was it was all considered his territory. So actually, after 7 or 8 months, I was doing pretty well. I could do a whole transaction from start to finish, but I was still making $0, right? Because it was his territory. And people were asking me, what are you doing there? I'm working 60 to 80 hours a week. What are you thinking? The only thing I could say or think to myself was, I know God put me here. I don't quite know why. This seems to be the outcome or the effect of the spiritual journey that I went on. I feel that, but I don't totally get it myself. And so I didn't always know how to answer that question. Well, 7 or 8 months later, the CEO rolled through town, and he took me out to lunch, and he said, I'm going to open 2 new offices. I'm going to give one to my brother and one to the vice president. And we need someone to stay here and hold down the fort in this, which was at the time our central office. So pretty much overnight, things started to transition. I was given a big chunk of the vice president's territory that was in that area and started to manage the rest that was also still his territory. Eventually, he transitioned out, and I did hold down that fort. Overnight, things pretty much changed. Here's what never changed: my sense of why I was there. Because even when things were really, really tough, and I showed up at work, I had to have a reason. I had to have a sense of my purpose. And I had to keep reminding myself, because I didn't always like where I was or what I was doing. So I gave myself the title of Executive Reflection of God. I didn't tell other people that, but it was like, you're like, no wonder you didn't have friends. I showed up, and what I realized was, I am not here to make friends. I am not here to make money. How many people go to work and think, I'm not here to make money? I'm not here about the paycheck. Not here for the paycheck. Not here to make a name for myself. Not here to accomplish a certain thing and get a certain title. I'm here for one reason. I exist to be the place where God shines through. I exist to glorify God. I exist to make God known. Therefore, no matter what happens, I am going to live truth. I am going to be honest. I am going to be principled. I am going to be accountable, right? If I say that I'm going to call someone and I don't, I'm going to do what it takes to make that right. I'm going to be loving. So when people were unloving, it didn't matter, because I wasn't there to get their friendship. I wasn't there to prove anything. I was just there to love. So I would just love back. When people said, you won't succeed, you won't get any business if you don't play by the rules, didn't matter. I didn't need business. I just needed to be honest. I just needed to work hard. I just needed to be accountable. And I did that, and what ended up happening was, even though I did lose business, I ended up getting 3 times the business back. People who never would have given business to this new kid without a background in finance brought their business to me because they trusted me, and because there weren't a lot of people they could trust at that time, in that industry. There were good people, but they seemed far and few in between. And the ones that really wanted that sought out the other ones that they could work with and trust their clients to. So the business boomed, the trust was there, and all of a sudden, I was kind of in charge of this area. But like I said, my job never changed. Didn't matter now that I had a good paycheck and I had some respect and, was kind of running the place. I was still just there to be the place where God shined through, to be the executive reflection of God. There was power in that good. And I had to keep my focus on that. I couldn't get into this stuff is cause, and if I get that right, then I'll get the stuff that I want. It was, I exist for this reason, and what happened was the rest took shape. And again, it took shape in a way that I didn't expect. I was kicking and screaming the whole time, going, what am I doing here? But looking back, I learned so much. I learned so much about the power of this principle, this spiritually scientific rule. How important it is to understand our purpose and to take that with us wherever we go. That's the first and foremost thing. I don't care what you think your job title is or where you are in your marital status or if you have kids or don't have kids. First and foremost, that's why we're here. And we don't retire from that. And we don't earn it. We don't work our way up to it. It's true when you're 2 years old or 200 years old. It's always going to be true, and it's never going to get dimmer, right? It's always going to be just as bright and just as brilliant because it is the light of God. And that's the way we could call that Christ. The very light of God, the very presence and activity of God made manifest tangibly in a way that we can see, in a way that we can feel, in a way that makes its way into every little aspect of our lives. Nothing left out of that. That's Christ. It's the same Christ that shone through the life of Jesus. It's the same Christ that shines through the life of us, truly. That's how valuable we are. Each of us unique, so God couldn't accomplish through anybody else what God can accomplish through us, what the light of Christ can accomplish through us. Everyone, but there are so many things out there telling us a different story. And here's where the Bible talks about that we're made in the likeness of God, but what I love is it doesn't leave it there. It says, effectively, from my point of view, I know it doesn't always look like that, and here's why, so you can understand it. And so first it says in the first chapter of Genesis in the Bible, made in the likeness of God, and then it says, it gives us this Adam and Eve allegory. And many of you know that story. To me, it is an allegory. It's not just a history lesson. It's a story that teaches us something about our lives. Here's my 10-second recap. Adam and Eve, they have it all good in this garden of good, but then they're tempted to eat from something called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. To me, that sounds like something. That sounds like this paradigm, which says you can have good or you can lose good. You can have a job, you can lose a job. You can have a great family, you can have a poor family. You can be by the beach, you cannot be by the beach. Good and evil, all mixed together. And it just says that's life, folks. Some people get a good hand, some people get a not so good hand, and most of us get something in between. And we wake up in the morning, and when we start from that premise, we start to feel what Adam and Eve felt. They took on that knowledge, they bit into that fruit, and the first thing they felt was shame. And then they felt kicked out of the garden of good, like they had to strive and struggle and toil just to get their little piece of the pie and survive. Does that look like what life is sometimes? Does that look like what our spiritual journey is, what our families are, what our careers are, what our health and well-being is about? Well, then we have to ask ourselves, what quote-unquote knowledge am I taking in, right? Am I starting from this standpoint? Because when cause and effect get reversed, we start to feel this stuff. And the shame one, boy, that's tough. We feel not good enough. We feel like I don't know enough. And maybe if I read that book and do that thing and go to that place. But all those things, those inspirational sources, their purpose in our life is just to remind us that the science of it is right here and now. It's as complete as it's ever going to be. You are as loved as you're ever going to be. You're as strong as you're ever going to be. You're as balanced and whole and healthy and harmonious as you're ever going to be. And I don't mean just judging by the surface appearance of things. I mean deeply, spiritually. It is there. It is built into our spiritual DNA. Nothing can change that. But the more we know about it, the more we see it proved in our lives. And so I have this little prop. It's a little mirror. And I don't carry this around just so I can check my hair on stage. This corresponds with that Adam and Eve allegory for me. And it's not a perfect analogy. Every analogy breaks down, but use it for what it's worth. So Adam and Eve, they had it all good, but when they put their focus on it, because it was knowledge, right? It means it's mental. It means it's about our thinking. When they took on this paradigm of that's what life is, and it kind of went pear-shaped, this mirror is like an analogy for our thinking. The brightness, the brilliance, the goodness of God, it's always shining, right? And this mirror, if I point it, even with just these little lights, I can get a reflection. But if you imagine the sun, I could get a really bright beam. But if I move this away and I point it towards the ground, I get no more reflection. Well, the sun's still there, right? Still just as bright and as warm and as capable of making things grow. But if the mirror is not reflected or focused on it, it doesn't reflect the light. This is an analogy for our thinking. the more we reorient and focus on the presence, the activity, the goodness of God, the more we see it reflected. When we take on that false knowledge, that false way of looking at things, that good and evil scenario, Murphy's Law, catch-22s, that's just what life is, then we stop seeing it reflected. Now, we're all sort of doing this. Right? But the good news is this mirror, even if I put it in a drawer for 20 years, the second I pulled it out and I focused it on the sun, it would reflect that light. Why? Because the light never moved, and because the mirror is built to reflect the light. That never changed. We are built to reflect the goodness of God. We're built for it. It's never going to go anywhere. We can't mess it up. We can't change it. It's built into who we are. And the other stuff, that's like junk mail. All the I can't, I'm not good enough. All the world is dark and the world is limited and opportunities are few. And my brother's stupid and I'm not so smart myself. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on. We all get it, just like we all get junk mail. The difference is when you get some junk mail, you look at it and you throw it away. It's not personal. And when you get the advertisement from Target that says time to buy a new grill, you don't say, what's wrong with my cooking? You know, what happened to my grill? How do they know? We don't take it personally. There's not some ad executive somewhere thinking about us and writing the ad and sending it off to Tom, right? We know that, and so it's really easy to just go, no, I don't want it. But when it comes to us in a voice that sounds like our voice, that feels like it's about our lives, the circumstances, the particulars, the intricates of who we are, we go, oh, that's me. Oh, what am I going to do about that? How do I fix it? And that's just like, right? So this is not about us. And ultimately, even if we focus too much on us, on our thinking, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? That's not focused on God. The idea is just to lose sight of every other thing, right? And that's not to say that this stuff doesn't matter. It's to say there is a direct cause and effect relationship here. The more we learn about God, and the word discovery is so important to me. This is not just about positive thinking. There's a difference, right? If your car breaks down and you're thinking positively, it means you're walking to work with a good attitude. Right? But if you make a discovery, it means you figured out how to fix your car or you found somebody who did. This is about discovery, right? This is not, if I think positively, then good things will happen. There's nothing wrong with thinking positively. It's good to be a positive person. Right? But this is a science. Science is not just about positive thinking. You don't think positively about math. You understand math. And if you don't, you discover what you need to understand about it. This is about discovery, too, because sometimes it's just about reorienting our vision to what we already know to be true and have just lost sight of. And a lot of other times, it's about having the humility to make some new discoveries. What more is God? God is an infinite subject, so there's always going to be more. Right? But what we learn and what we feel, you know it when you feel the sun on your face. You know it. And you don't just argue it. You don't say, I believe in the sun, and you affirm that the sun is here, and you declare that it's here. Right? When you feel the sun, and you got it. When we find out more about God, when we learn more about the presence of God, when we experience that, and we feel it, and we know it, and it has this tangible effect in our life, and we can trust that, because it's a discovery. It might not always look like it on the surface. In fact, many times it won't. But that's okay, right? When you think about what's progressed humanity throughout human history, it rarely came from something we saw first and then someone made a scientific discovery. It was almost always the other way around. It was almost always a mental journey, a mental discovery, right? Somebody first started to comprehend the laws of aerodynamics, and then they built something with it. They built planes and people started to fly. But we didn't first see people fly and then go, oh, laws of aerodynamics. Right? It might look like we're limited. It might look like there's not many opportunities out there. It might look like there's no way to fix that old relationship or to mend that situation with our family member. It might look like you like this government or don't like this government. All that stuff that looks like some distorted version of the perfection of the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven, that was meant to be the good news from the beginning. That's what Jesus kept telling everybody and telling his disciples to share. Go and share the gospel, the good news. That's what the word gospel means, the good news. And what was the good news? That the kingdom of heaven is at hand. People said, what's it going to look like? And he said, it's not an up here and it's not a down there. The kingdom of God is within you. To me, that means it's a spiritual journey. It's something we begin to understand and we begin to feel, and then it takes shape. But it's all right here and now, all of it, all the goodness that our heart yearns for, all this list and a million times more, right? And it might not take shape in the way we want it to take shape, but it will take shape in really good ways, and not in a plan B kind of a way, but like in a plan A, this is the best for you kind of a way. God is not a tool. We do this. We go, okay, I don't have what I need over here, so I'll pray. And we go, okay, I got everything in God. This is really good. And we're looking over our shoulder going, did I get that boyfriend or that girlfriend yet? Nope, okay, I'll pray some more, right? Did I get that job? Nope, I'll pray some more. But that's trying to use God like a tool to get what we want. That's not the point. The point is that the good that we search for and yearn for is literally 100% of it, tangibly in God. Because it's spiritual doesn't make it any less tangible, any less feelable, any less understandable. It doesn't make it abstract. It's the other way around. It makes it simple and straightforward and compassionate, right? And unconditional. We literally find it in God, and when we find it there and when we feel it there, it begins to just open up in ways. It's a cause and effect relationship, but we're not using God to get what we want over here. We don't have to worry about that. That part will take care of itself, and Jesus said that, right? Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things are going to work themselves out. That's my paraphrase. Okay, I'm going to tell you one last quick little story, and then we're going to wrap up. Sometimes we compartmentalize our lives, right? We go, okay, I get this. I get how my thinking can affect my relationships or that kind of stuff, but how could this really affect the economy governs my job opportunities. What can I do about that? Or the cells in my body or whatever govern my health and well-being. Well, health and well-being, that's the one I want to focus on for just a second. And there's lots that we could take this to very specifically and unpack, but you guys can do that yourself as you search and find more in your discovery of what God is and what that means for you and your lives. But health and well-being, boy, we often want to separate that one. So the temptation is that our bodies are just like machines, and maybe, my happiness or my stress level affects certain things, but maybe not everything, right? But I'm here to say it's just all of it. Absolutely every aspect of our lives is encompassed within this. We didn't say all good comes from God except for these parts, right? When we talk about balance and strength, we're talking about the balance and strength of our bank accounts, the balance and strength of our relationships, the balance and strength of our bodies. These qualities take shape in so many ways in our lives, and our bodies are just one of those things. The body's not the source of anything. It's just the best that we understand and feel in terms of how these qualities take shape for us right now. But we don't ever have to expect the good and evil scenario there any more than anywhere else. So here's my last little story. This young woman called me one time, and she was experiencing some very severe stomach and chest pains. And we got to talking, and part of what she was really struggling with in life was missing a sense of purpose. That her career wasn't how she wanted it to be, her living situation wasn't. And we began talking about, a lot of things, but eventually about gratitude, identifying some of that good, discovering right there together on the phone some of that good that was already there so she could really kind of feel that. And we talked some more, and ultimately I said I would pray for her once we hung up. But I also mentioned this song that I used to listen to on the way to work. When I was struggling and going, I just don't want to go to work today, I would play this song sometimes. I had a short commute, and it was a rap song. It was called Keeping It Real. And the song was about gratitude. And it was, it's maybe not the most deeply spiritual song, but it was really about, it was about gratitude. You might not have everything you think you want, but take a deeper look, because it's all there. So I said, I'm going to send you this song. I sent it to her in an email to listen to. Well, I prayed with her. She called me back 2 hours later, and she said, you know what, I was in my bed, and I was trying to read the Bible, and I was just in so much pain I couldn't read anymore, so I had to put it down. She said, then I put on some spiritual hymns and things from church, and I was listening to that, and I got to the end of the CD, and I was just still in so much pain. And she said, so I crawled over to the laptop on the side of my bed, and I saw your email, and I opened it up, and I started listening to that song, and she said I was healed instantaneously. So a rap song, where, you know what? It comes from all kinds of different sources. We got to blow the lid off, the box off, where and how we think this is going to take shape in our lives. We're looking for qualities because those things are spiritual, and we can trust it. We can trust the cause and effect relationship in every aspect, including our health and well-being. But all that we need that will inspire us, that will show us the way, that will reveal and help us discover this good, we can be open to all the ways that it'll come, and we can let go of anything else because it's there, and God will, show us that when we're willing to just have the humility to see how it comes together, even if, a philosophy major has got to work in finance for a while. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this last question. In Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy writes this. She says on page 192, sorry, that's the wrong quote. She says this on page 90, that the admission to oneself that man is God's own likeness sets man free to master the infinite idea. I'll read it one more time. The admission to oneself that man is God's own likeness sets man free to master the infinite idea. Notice she doesn't say we have to first master the infinite idea before we can admit to ourselves that we're God's own likeness. We are constantly, this is part of the junk mail. I got to do all this, and I got to master this idea before I can admit to myself in a genuine way that I am God's own likeness. But there's a cause and effect relationship here, just like in every science, every scientific rule. First, we admit it. That takes humility. That takes discovery to really understand why we can admit it, why that's okay. It takes maybe even more discovery than the discovery we've already made in order to feel it in an all-new, fresh way. But that's what it's about. Because it's that then empowers us to master the infinite idea. So my question to you is, are you willing to admit it? Will you be willing to admit it to yourself 2 weeks from now when things don't look like that on the surface? You're going to try and fix them first so that then you can be good, or you're going to start with the goodness that's there, focus on that, and see how that begins to empower you. Not just positive thinking, but genuine discovery of what's already there. Discovery means you didn't create it or cause it to be. It means you found something that was already created. Right? So none of this is on our shoulders. We are not responsible for any of this. We are the outcome of God, the place where God shines through. My last question, are you willing to admit it about the person sitting next to you? You can check just to make sure. The minute we start to say some people have it and some people don't is we start to lose it. We get a very small sense of God. The smaller our God gets, the less we have to draw on when we go to try and make some discovery. This has to be universal in order to be real, right? Otherwise, it's just a religion or an opinion or a self-help system, and it is none of those things. It's the science of Christ. Thank you guys very much for being here tonight.